We are in Section 2, Part 5. Section 2 is about the PRINCE2 Agile principles, the various practices, and the artifacts within those practices. Part 5 is particularly concerned with the risk practice. Firstly, the purpose of the practice: to identify, assess, and control uncertainties that would affect the project's objectives and, as a result, improve the ability of the project to succeed. Projects have more risks than business as usual or operations. And for example, there may be a risk of a supplier not performing well or going bankrupt, or there could be risk related to poor quality or something to do with the people's productivity and so on. These need to be identified in a timely manner and assessed, analyzed, and the response plans need to be put in place and implemented in a timely manner. What is a risk? It is an uncertain event or a set of events that, if they should occur, they will affect the achievement of the objectives, which means that the risks are not guaranteed to occur because it always has a likelihood and impact if it occurs. Of course, the risk which is named or labeled as definitely will occur, then it is no longer a risk. It is an issue that needs to be handled. Every risk typically has a probability of its occurrence and also the impact as a result of it on the project objectives. There are some other characteristics as well. For example, proximity is another important one. How soon is the risk likely to occur? Typically, the focus is on threats or negative risks, but it is important to also acknowledge the positive ones, which are known as opportunities. For example, there may be an opportunity to cut cost or save time, deliver early, obtain more work based on the better quality of delivery, and so on. And these need to be exploited and enhanced. In an agile way of working, everybody should remain vigilant for risks and take ownership of them when appropriate. Of course, the delivery team will manage their own risks, but if the risks are concerned with the project as a whole, they need to be informed to the project manager. And if any delivery risk is a key one, that also need to be informed to the project manager so that it can be assessed whether it should be in the project risk register. And we are not saying that everybody should own a specific risk, but everybody should participate in risk management, irrespective of whether there is a risk manager appointed or whether it's the project manager who is owning the risk management, which typically they will have to. Which means that risk management needs to be planned properly. And it can be a team risk or a project risk. So team risks are handled by the product owner at the delivery level, whereas the project risks are handled by the project manager, handled meaning managed. We have a PRINCE2 risk management technique, which is recommended. You could have a slightly different technique, but it should be not deviating completely from this approach. Essentially, there are 5 steps here. The initial 4 are in sequence: identify, assess, plan, and implement, and then communicate throughout. So identify is about identifying and documenting risks. This can happen during the team planning, project planning, during the team and project retrospectives. Assessment is to assess the probability and the impact should it occur. And these have to be estimated and evaluated. This is part of the team planning and the project planning generally. Plan step is typically creating response plans for each and every risk. Again, this is part of the team and project planning events or situations. And then the next is to implement the actions as agreed in the previous plan step. This happens during iterations and project stages. And communication should happen throughout whenever it is necessary. For example, during an iteration or at the end of it, or during the stages, end of the stage, risk summary, and so on. A few more things regarding the risk approach in PRINCE2 Agile. As mentioned earlier, there are delivery level risks and project level risks. Delivery level are handled by the product owners and tracked in product backlogs and also reflected on the team dashboards in a summary form. We will take a closer look at how risks are depicted or shown in the product backlog. It's known as a risk-adjusted product backlog, wherein not only the functionalities expected by the user or customer are there in the form of user stories, but also certain risk response entries will also be there in the product backlog. Such a product backlog is called a risk-adjusted backlog. Project level risks, these are with the project managers. They are informed about it through any source, and the project manager is supposed to document them in a risk register, and they will highlight some of them or summarize them in the project dashboard periodically. There are also organizational risks which may not be fully in control of the project management team, but these are things like resistance to agile adoption. These definitely need the attention of the project board, and they may seek the assistance of the project manager as well to implement certain actions. And some of these will also need to come into the risk register of the project. In Agile, risk budgets are rarely used. And because budgets are set, there is less or zero tolerance on cost and time at various levels. However, there may be some flexibility on this policy. And as I mentioned earlier, the risk adjusted backlog, it's possible that sometimes a specific user story may not be implemented just because there is a risk action which is more priority. So that's called replacing low priority tasks or user stories with risk responses in that iteration. Any need for a risk budget will need to be defined in the risk management approach. An important technique or tool that is used in the risk practice in PRINCE2 Agile is the Agilometer assessment tool. We'll take a very deeper look at this. It's coming up soon. It's about understanding the readiness for Agile way of working. Can a specific project be working in an Agile manner? What are the weaknesses in adopting Agile? And that can help in making decisions on how to overcome those weaknesses. So there are 6 sliders in this Agilometer. Each slider represents a specific way of working in Agile, and they may be evaluated through a workshop, and we'll go into depth into that. These are good to do in the pre-project and then into the initiation stage in more detail, and then continually after that. But first, some of the Agile artifacts or all the Agile artifacts in the risk practice. To begin with, we have the risk management approach. This is about, it's more like a risk management plan for the project in terms of how the risk will be managed. So it should have guidances on the risk management procedure or the technique that we noted earlier. And things like how much is the risk tolerance, because there need to be response actions in place which will bring the risks at least below that tolerance level. So for example, 10% of the overall project budget might be a risk tolerance level. Therefore, the actions for the risks should bring down the risks below that 10% value of the total budget. Otherwise, it may be decided that the project should not continue or even start. However, at the beginning, there may be a lack of understanding of detailed risks, but only high-level risks will be known. Responsibilities in terms of who contributes to risk management. There could be a risk manager, usually the project manager, otherwise somebody else could be appointed. There could be a core risk management team, etc. Timing of risk activities such as when will certain risk identification sessions occur, for example, monthly, once at some point in time. And there could be something like a risk audit timeline as well, procedural audit as well as implementations, actions are audit. Any other resources required for risk management? For example, people resources can mean people, tools, technology, any third parties who might be needed, or any information data stores, repositories, and so on. However, some of these will be separately specified. For example, the risk budget, if applicable, supporting tools and techniques, any risk standards, such as there could be an ISO standard or some other international risk management standard, and so on, and any other detailed references